What's up guys, Brian from Boopinion, and today we're going to be talking about a game series that hasn't really been given a lot of love lately by Nintendo, and it may be for a reason. That reason being, I think it's another surprise announcement they're going to drop, potentially either this summer or in the fall, and the game would be coming out in the end of the year, such as November or December, or potentially early 2021. What I'm of course talking about, which if you haven't guessed by the title now, is Donkey Kong. Which probably makes you puzzled at first because obviously they just ported over Tropical Freeze in 2018 and it seems like it wouldn't really be something they would address right now given Breath of the Wild 2 coming out, another potential 3D Mario on the horizon, such as the rumor suggested earlier following Paper Mario's release. But why I think this may be the case is because of the following factors. For one thing, you can't even play Donkey Kong Country on Super Nintendo, which I think is entirely on purpose. So either this is going to be them announcing that you're going to be able to play all three of the trilogies on the Super Nintendo Online, which would be a pretty big deal. They're going to add another sequel to Donkey Kong Country Returns, such as another spin-off, or they are going to go off in a new direction with the 3D series, which would be a pretty big leap, I'll admit, but it wouldn't surprise me given how they've kind of done the same thing with other series, such as Mario Odyssey. They didn't have a 3D Mario game for a while. Breath of the Wild, they took a big deviation from the previous games where they made it open world and there wasn't a set order for what you had to do. When poking around with the numbers, it's also important to note that Donkey Kong is actually Nintendo's top 5 best-selling game franchises, which is really surprising when you think about it, considering how many games Super Smash Bros. Has sold, and I didn't even realize that it was more popular than the Kirby game series. And kind of going off of that as well, when you're comparing it to other game franchises such as Mario or Zelda, typically Mario and Zelda have had a big game come out every 4 to 5 years, or roughly around that, maybe 4 to 6 years, and it's been more than that since the last time a game came out for Donkey Kong, with the last big original game coming out in 2014, which was Tropical Freeze, as I mentioned before. So given how it's one of the best game franchises for Nintendo and it's been that long, this is yet another reason why it seems like we're due for another Donkey Kong game. It kind of seems like Nintendo has been dropping hints as well that they're potentially working on a new Donkey Kong game, as they've shown small clips from Super Smash Bros. Ultimate when King K. Rool was introduced, for instance. They had a Donkey Kong helmet, which Mario was wearing in Super Paper Mario. And there's also been some reports as well that, for instance, the main designer for Donkey Kong Country, Stephen Dupree, returned to Retro Studios in January 2020 after taking a 2-year hiatus. So they could be working on a new Donkey Kong game in Retro Studios, which would then be released before Metroid Prime 4, and kind of satisfy fans of generally Retro Studios, which I'll admit would piss me off a little bit, not gonna lie. But I know people would definitely be happy with a new Donkey Kong Country game, or just a new Donkey Kong game in general. So here's my thoughts on where Nintendo could be heading with this, and I'll say it in the order in which I think would be the most likely. Number 1, they're going to have Donkey Kong Country, all 3 of the games announced that they're available on the Super Nintendo Online. Following that, I would say that there's going to be a new Donkey Kong Country Returns game, which would be the 3rd part of the series, and it would kind of mirror the original Donkey Kong Country series. And then lastly, this is kind of just an idea I'm just throwing out there, which they could do. I'm not sure how likely it is, given how the first one received, but they could do a new 3D platform game for Donkey Kong, kind of like Donkey Kong 64, which would be pretty wild, but as I mentioned before, some of the other series have had their games go more open world and able to explore them more. But as I said, probably we're going to get an announcement for the trilogy at least being available in the Super Nintendo at some point. Leave a comment below letting me know what you guys think is the most likely option, and if there's something I didn't mention that you think could also happen, I'd love to hear that as well. Anyways, this has been Brian from the Boopinion, and I'll see you guys in the next video.